a promise. God says, if you'll keep my commandments, I will keep for you the promise and the kindness that I swore to your fathers, to your grandparents. Just keep my commandments. As long as you do that, God says, it'll be great. So the word the Torah uses for if here is a funny word. The Torah uses the word Eikev. Eikev also means heel. So Rashi comments, what does God mean when you say keep my commandments? He means the heel-like commandments. Commandments that people step on. People ignore them. They say these mitzvahs aren't important, these mitzvahs don't matter so much. To keep those commandments, God says, the ones people step on, then I'll give you the great stuff. That's what Rashi says. The Midrash has a very similar sounding comment that Rashi has, but it's different. The Midrash says this: if you keep the commandments that people throw under their feet, then God says, I'll give you all these promises, all these blessings. What's the difference between stepping on or throwing under your feet? So stepping on makes sense, it means you don't consider it to be valuable. You throw it under your feet. You don't consider it valuable. What does throwing under your foot mean? What is that referring to? So there is another midrash about King David. It says about King David says about himself that I'm afraid in my bad days. Why am I afraid of my bad days? Because the sin of my heels surrounds me. And the Talmud comments, what is King David afraid of? Which sins of his heels is he referring to? He says, I'm afraid of you saying in your Torah you should keep all commandments the same, the lighter commandments and the heavier commandments the same way. So King David says, I'm afraid because of the ones which are heel-like. I'm afraid of the heel-like commandments. I'm afraid maybe I didn't keep those commandments properly. Maybe I didn't do the heel-like ones. I may have kept the big ones, but he said keep all the mitzvahs the same way. Maybe I didn't do that. That's what I'm afraid in the bad days. That's what King David is. I'm afraid in the bad days. The problem is, King David himself says about himself, I have kept your commandments. They have a lot of reward. And what does it mean they have a lot of? The Torah uses that word, the word Eikev there too. I kept all your commandments, even the heel-like ones. So what does King David mean when he says, I did keep your commandments except for the heel-like ones, I'm not sure. The other place he says, I kept the heel-like ones too. What does he mean? He kept the heel-like ones, he didn't keep the heel-like ones. What's going on? So there was once talking to someone about doing something which a person thought was beyond his level. I thought this is like when it's not for me. This is like you're asking me to do something which is way beyond myself. I was speaking to him, I think, about putting on film with other people. And he felt like this was like beyond him. It's not something that he needs to do. And he tells the Rebbe, well, imagine if you ask someone to put on a tie, they don't have a shirt, they don't have shoes. You're going to put on a tie without a shirt, doesn't make any sense. So the truth is that perspective has weight. Every mitzvah has two components. One component is it has a certain school, a certain blessing. Every mitzvah has a different blessing. There are some mitzvahs which bless our mind, which bless our heart, like tefillin. Put them on your head, and it makes your mind open to think like a Jew. Put it next to your heart, makes your heart feel like a Jew. So those mitzvahs, that's a mitzvah which you could easily see as something which is really important. And there are mitzvahs which you look at as, well, the skula, the blessing, this mitzvah is not so pertinent to my character, to my mojo, to what I'm doing right now. It's not. I'll do that one day. That's true if you look at mitzvahs as what they're giving you, and you're looking at them based on a scale of how much they're giving you and what they're giving you. But imagine if you look at the other element of in a mitzvah, the essence of a mitzvah. What's the essence of a mitzvah? The essence of a mitzvah is that it connects you to Hashem. The Zohar says the word mitzvah means savsa, means bonding. So I'm not doing a mitzvah because of what it gives me. If I look at what it gives me, then I put that on the scale and I say this one's more, this one's less, this one's really not for me right now. Then the analogy of the tie makes sense. But if you're looking at the mitzvah as a way to connect to God, then it doesn't matter which mitzvah it is. It doesn't matter if it's a big one or a small one. There are no big ones and small ones. They're all the same. They're all a way to connect to God. So that's what King David was afraid of. That's what the Midrash means. People throw them under their feet. They say, I'll do them, but I'll do them later. I'll do them because that's not what I need to do right now. I need to concentrate on more basic things. Eventually, I'll get to those things which are so negligible, things which are so unimportant to me, things which are not for me right now. I'm not on that level. I'll do them, but they throw them for later. So King David knew he kept all the mitzvahs. He knew I do all the commandments of God. King David knew that. But King David felt maybe those mitzvahs which are not so important in the vis-a-vis how they affect his internal and humanness and character and heart and mind, maybe those mitzvahs which are more related to the heel, mitzvahs which are more could be viewed as what they give you as something which is more benign, maybe those mitzvahs I delay them. On a personal level, you can say this mitzvah I'm going to do when I grow old and I keep everything else, and I'll add that to my mojo. But right now I'm not doing it, and it's not for me right now. That's what a person might. King David knew he did them, but he felt maybe I delayed them. Maybe I didn't do them with the same alacrity as I do other mitzvot. Maybe I did them with a little more. I was a little more procrastinating about those kinds of mitzvahs. So what happens like this? King David said, because I did that, because I made that mistake, because I didn't give the proper leverage to a mitzvah as being God's commandment in order to connect with God, and I just looked at it as what it gives me, and I put it on the scale. So I'm afraid in my bad days. What are bad days? You're thinking of other, right? Bad days refer to this. Bad days refer to days of nature. Refers to the way God runs the world according to the rules of nature. If I'm going to look at the world according to nature, so then we're one sheep, 70 wolves, we can't possibly survive. So there's no way we could survive based on nature. And so on a personal level, if I look at my merits and vis-a-vis what I'm supposed to get, I'm not going to do that well. So if I approach God's commandments with logic, I'm asking God also to judge me with logic. I'm asking God also to run my world with nature. And that's what King David was afraid, because I didn't give the proper leverage to your commandments as mitzvahs, as ways to connect with God. And instead I looked at them and I put them on a scale. It's true that God wants us to understand and appreciate and internalize mitzvahs. There's two parts. When God gave us the Torah, we said we will do, and then we will understand. So people think, well, I have to also have obedience to God, those mitzvahs which I can't understand. Mitzvahs which I could understand, I'll focus on those first, and I'll get to the ones which I can't understand, which don't seem so important to me. But that's not the way God gave us the Torah. The first thing that God wanted from us, when He gave us the Torah, was we will do before we understand. That's an approach to mitzvah. So if I approach the mitzvahs with that attitude, I will do before I understand, and I'm doing this because God gave me this mitzvah, because I want to connect to God, and God did the same thing for me also. God doesn't reckon with the forces of nature, there are no forces besides God, but God doesn't run my world according to the normal order He may give the world, but instead God treats me with the bris v'sachesed v'sashvua, with the super rational commitment that He gave to the Jewish people, with the love that God promised our grandparents, with a kindness, not based on merits, not based on how much you deserve. If I approach mitzvahs beyond logic, then God also approaches my will and my blessings also beyond logic. So what litmus test to know if it's with logic or without logic? It's when you ignore the usual Jewish refrain. What do you ask a Jew? Why did you do this mitzvah? What do the Jews say? I'm not up to this level yet. So we're very, pious. We want to be on the level. We want to be deserving of this commandment. We can't do this yet. That's what Jews always say. I have to be honest with myself. Jews? You heard this? So this is what God tells us. Don't do it that way. Don't do things in an orderly way, in a logical way. Go beyond. Give yourself over to me, not in a normal way, not in a regular way. Realize the essence of what a mitzvah is. Realize the romance in a mitzvah. And then God says, the romance continues. I'm going to give you also, beyond what you deserve, beyond what the merits are. The bris v'sachesed v'sashvua. L'chaim, l'chaim, and a good tavach, a frei l'chavach, a vach with lots of hatzlachim, suras tevis, and a vach with, we should see the promise, the bris v'sachesed v'sashvua. Any questions or comments? Cucumbers. Oh, it's halskap. All right, let's stop here. Halakha baruch. Oh, Zev.